Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Family Office podcast. I'm delighted today to be joined by Danielle Valkner, who leads our family office practice in the US, and she works with some of the world's largest families and family groups. Danielle, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start by a lot of the families and family offices we work with across Europe and the Middle East are really interested in what families in the US are doing because it's such a mature and developed market. So can you talk us through some of the trends that you're seeing and maybe what you're expecting over 2026?
Yeah, it's definitely a busy time in this space. If I had to categorize the top trends and where we're really focused with our clients, I would say first and foremost is professionalization.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more families really think of the family office as a business and wanting to make sure that they have the right technology controls and people in place to be successful.
Yeah.
And kind of along with that, AI, figuring out how AI applies from that aspect and how do we leverage AI to be more efficient and effective. Governance is a very big focal point right now, especially as families are growing and we know that there's this great wealth transfer that's going to be happening over the next 15 to 20 years. And so thinking through what are the appropriate policies and procedures that need to be in place. And kind of along with that, how do we scale to serve more as the family and the complexity grows? And one thing that's really interesting is we as a firm are following the deal activity of family offices. We are seeing more and more direct deals. Yeah. And I think there's some really interesting trends developing there. And then kind of also on the philanthropy space and seeing more families aligning their investment strategy with some of their philanthropic missions. Yeah. So definitely a lot to talk about.
For sure. And I think some of those topics are high on the agenda here. Maybe a few of them are newer topics. But maybe if we start with the professionalization piece, and especially in the context of AI, one thing we've been seeing here is family offices are more interested in how they can use AI. But actually, when we start talking to them, the first piece they need to look at is the professionalization and the processes to kind of understand, actually, what would I be using AI for? Is that the same that you're seeing?
It is. I will say that, today AI is so accessible and it is embedded in a lot of the technologies that people are already using today. But to really take it to the next level and get and to maximize your benefits from it, you do need to have your basic infrastructure, your technology strategy and your data strategy and data management policies in place to really make effective use of the AI. But we are seeing family offices, many of them here in the U.S. are kind of diving in, making sure that they have those responsible use policies in place. It was interesting. For some time, it was kind of a wait and see period. But then you run the risk of some of your employees kind of using unauthorized AI tools within the family office. And so it's really important at a minimum to have that policy of what's acceptable and not acceptable, and thinking through the privacy and the confidentiality of that. But we're definitely seeing great opportunity across the front office on the investment side, the middle office and sort of aggregating and analyzing the data, and then also on the back office on the accounting and reporting side. So we can dive in a bit deeper there, but I think the biggest thing is upskilling your staff, making sure that they're aware of what the tools are, how they should be used, and where the opportunities are, and just bringing them along on the journey, because you want to make sure you have the right controls in place.
Yeah, and I think ourselves as PwC, we've been on this journey, right? So it's taking some of those learnings out to our clients, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, and it is a journey and it's changing so fast. And so I think because of that, we are seeing more and more family offices kind of move from the old school where it was, we want all of our data and capabilities and information within our own four walls, just from a privacy perspective. And now with the advancement in technology, that's just really no longer practical to try to manage all of that internally. So more family offices are embracing the cloud, making sure they have the right controls in place and taking advantage of a lot of the innovation that's out there in the marketplace.
And can we maybe then just talk quickly on the privacy side of things? Because I think that does still come up a lot as a challenge with our client base here, is how do you know that you're secure and private when you're using AI?
Yeah, so nothing's foolproof, right? And so as much as the AI is enabling us to be more efficient and effective in our jobs, it's also enabling the cyber criminals to be more efficient and effective in what they're trying to accomplish. And so the deep fakes and the scams are, there's new ones and new risks coming up every day in that regard. So I do think first and foremost, it's understanding and categorizing your data. What is that sensitive data that you really need to protect? And what are the leading practices, controls around that? And really understanding, too, how your vendors have access to your data and how they're using it. That's a whole nother consideration to be focused on. And so there's a lot of leading practices in this area. And I think it's very important to lean on the experts, the people who live and breathe this every day and kind of know what some of the latest developments are. So making sure that you're taking advantage of all of the controls that are out there. And as I mentioned, nothing is foolproof, but there are definitely ways to be as good as you can be at it and making that a priority.
Yeah. If we think about professionalization just a bit more in terms of running the family office like a business, I think is what you said. Is that in terms of the processes and controls and procedures, or are you also seeing in terms of family offices wanting to switch from having or families wanting to switch from the family office being a cost to being a profit center, or is it really focused around that kind of controlling piece?
I would say first and foremost, it's the former, really focusing on, do we have the right controls, processes, and skill sets to be successful in preserving and growing the wealth. But then also we are seeing in the U.S., some sort of profit element to it. There is some tax efficiencies in the U.S. that are advantageous if it is a true business. And also sometimes family offices get so good at what they do that they want to share it with, other family offices. And we're seeing them develop more into family office environments as well.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll definitely see continuing. And if we think then maybe about governance, what sort of projects are you working on at the moment? What struggles are you seeing family offices and families grapple with?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time with academia, at Northwestern and Kellogg School of Business, and also Stanford, and really understanding the latest trends in governance for enterprising families. And so it's always a hot topic, but I would say now more than ever with the growth in the wealth and the corresponding growth in the families, governance is front and center. And so really thinking through how the family leads, how they make decisions, what are the policies that need to be in place, and what is the level of transparency that we're going to provide to our stakeholders, and how do we do all of that, sort of an effective way to meet the goals and mission of the family and the family office. And so I think with the growth in the size and the complexity of the wealth in the families, that is just becoming more and more of a kind of front and center need. I would say families are also just thinking through evaluating what is the mission and the legacy of this family? What does it mean to be part of this family? And what do we want the legacy to be? It's changing, right? So the legacy that was set up, several years ago, potentially by the founder of the business, is it the same today? And does it kind of need to evolve as the family evolves? And there's some really interesting case studies out there about how families have had to pivot and change. And so I was just at a conference at Northwestern, and we had close to 100 different enterprising families in the room. And we did these tabletop exercises where the family members shared the legacy that was passed on to them and the legacy that they wanted to pass on to future generations. And we found overwhelmingly that most wanted to change it a little bit. And so in the past, a lot of the legacy and values were centered around hard work and grit and commitment. And families really continue to value that, but they want to expand it to also encompass humanity and social responsibility. And so how do we still honor the legacy of past generations, but kind of expand it to allow for innovation and new perspectives to bring that next generation along. So a lot of, sort of thoughtful processes going on that topic. And then really kind of related to that too is how do we engage this next generation? How do we make this something that they want to be a part of?
Yeah, and I think that kind of next generation piece and the scalability of the family office, and then how you look after the different generations' needs efficiently is a really important topic we're starting to see as part of the great wealth transfer. And every time I say that, in my head, it's capitalized. Great wealth transfer. But we're starting to see that as well. It sounds like that's something that's coming up with you a lot.
So we have a lot of clients in the U.S. that are very established and sophisticated family offices, and they are grappling with the level of complexity that kind of has transpired over the years, and how are we going to do what we do today and do it to serve more generations and do it efficiently and effectively. And so really taking a step back to think about what do we need to change around our business model, around our service catalog, to enable us to effectively serve multiple generations. And really, what is the cost of that complexity? We do have some families that are trying to unwind some of the complexity that was created in the past. And wherever possible, think about, can we standardize this and make it a little bit more clear, easier to understand, and easier to manage? And then, of course, the digital transformation is all part of that scalability, not only being efficient with digital transformation, but how does it make us more effective?
Yeah.
And how do we really empower the digital transformation and how we communicate with our family members?
Yeah. And let's maybe then switch. You talked about the investments that you're seeing and the rise in direct deals. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so at PwC, we previously had been doing an annual deal study, really understanding the investing behaviors of family offices. And we're now thinking about doing it more frequently, potentially every 6 months, because we're seeing a lot of trends develop that we think we need to keep a closer pulse on. And yes, we are seeing families being very active and doing more direct deals. And within that direct deal space, in the first half of 2025, it was the first time that the value of the family office deals was really focused primarily on impact-related themes. And so 57% of the value of the deals that family offices engaged in the first half of 2025 were focused on social responsibility and impact themes like education, healthcare, affordable housing. And so that was a really interesting trend to see. Yeah. We know that's been that whole wealth for good has been growing over the years, and especially here in the U.S., just with our current political climate, I think that the private wealth sector has really been stepping up to fill some voids in our current administration. And it's been great to be a part of it and great to see that, and also see people embrace the fact that there are really attractive opportunities and returns available in that space.
Yeah, and I think that then also leads into the philanthropic projects that we're working on as well, right? How you align your investments with your philanthropy. You're seeing that as well, I assume.
That is such an amazing opportunity. And so, our wealthy families have been, so philanthropic. And really, we're seeing the younger generation wanting to align everything they do with those missions. And so how can we be successful and get the return on our investments that we're looking for, but also do it in a socially responsible and impactful way? And so, yes, aligning your investment strategy with your philanthropic strategy really just magnifies the impact that you're able to have. One key example that we have here in the U.S., and it's very, very public, is Lucas Walton, who has really championed impact investing and has done an amazing job at it, and has launched a third-party management firm to help others come along. And the level of impact and the successfulness, as you look at the returns, has been really amazing. So we're seeing more and more families get involved in those areas.
Yeah, it's really inspiring. Well, Danielle, I think it's clear that there's a lot for family offices to be thinking about. If, as a final word, what do you think is going to keep you the busiest for 2026?
I think it's AI.
Yeah.
AI, cybersecurity, making sure that we're being very thoughtful in protecting the data while taking advantage of the innovation that's out there in the marketplace. And then the governance topic of how do we effectively and efficiently serve this growing family? Do we need to change the way we make decisions? What information we share across the family and how we communicate with them are all primary areas of focus.
Yeah. Totally agree. Thank you so much for your time, Danielle. It was really interesting to speak with you.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening, and we'll speak to you next time. Cheers.